Hey, Vinny Melkus Outdoors. So we're back from the holiday season. So I went out west. I didn't do any fishing, but I got to go to a pretty unique fishing shop that's in Tucson, Arizona. And that's Ace Hardware. I think I've talked about it in the past. And this guy has turned it into a the best Ace Hardware I've ever been to in the U.S. I mean, because it's just unique. It has It has outdoor stuff, hunting, really great fishing section, like one of the best. I mean, it's kind of gone down just slightly from what it used to be, but it's still really awesome. It has an awesome ammo selection. It has some unique things too, like for grilling and like for Christmas decoration, candies, all kinds of crazy stuff. But the fishing section is pretty amazing. And every time I go there, I always got to pick me up something, and then I always get something for Christmas from there. And I've talked about these in the past. The reason I'm doing this video at all, instead of doing like another fishing video or whatnot, is because I found something unique there. And the bait is not from Arizona or anything. It's not unique. Let me look at it because they come from somewhere in the Midwest, I believe. But I can't remember. But first, before I get to them, I wanted to show you a unique Arizona bait that I always get there. I'm starting to collect them because I haven't been fishing that much in the last few months, and my mom buys them for me. That's what I get for birthday or Christmas presents, and that's the Willy Whacker spinner baits. I believe this is the only place left that sells them. And when I was a kid, these things were killer. They're lightweight spinner baits. I think I've talked about them on the channel before. And they are absolutely amazing. I found something similar, like a Buckeye, I believe. They have a very similar build, but this guy hand makes them. And he does some unique stuff, like there's like a combo chatterbait type thing. But anyway, these are usually the best, and I've caught some giant fish in the Midwest off these spinner baits. And the unique thing about them, as opposed to mini spinner baits, is that light wire frame right there. The arm, these things get the thumping. I mean, it's good. And then usually some of his heads that he ties are just amazing. Not just, this is just a plain Jane whatever glitter white, but some of them there's a tie or some kind of foil in there, and they're pretty amazing. And this is what I throw most of my spinner baits. In fact, I'd say now I'm getting to the point, because I keep collecting them, probably 80% of my spinner baits are these Willy Whackers now. And this is the only place you can get them anymore. Used to be able to get them a few other places, but I know guys like, ask like a John Murray or a Brett Hyde or somebody, they know, or Josh Bertram or something like that. They know what these are. Guarantee it. They've heard of them growing up out there. Okay. So I picked up a few other things. I always got to get my robo-worms there. And then I got this for Tokyo rigging. I wanted to try it out. It's a Yannick Rock. Okay, so let's get to it. So I found this unique swim jig, which I really like the Mega Bass. If you watch my stuff, I like that Mega Bass swim jig a lot. And then there's one other one I throw too, but Mega Bass one is my go-to one. Well, I saw this going down the aisle. I was like, of all the swim jigs, this is kind of unique. I mean, it's pretty unique head, unique eyes, and a unique foil strip on it, and just the concave of the lead head, or lead or whatever it is, I believe it's lead, is unique among some of the swim baits that I have seen. And I'm going to show you this. I've already opened it. It's this company. You might have heard of them, Blitz, but I haven't. I just happened to see them on the rack there. But anyway, Blitz Lures. And here is this. This is actually let's get the right one here, the Blitz Shad. And this is the dude right here. And you see that? I mean, I'm sure you've thrown a lot of swim jigs. I know I have, and I've like kind of settled on the Mega Bass and a couple other ones, but everybody has a swim jig. I'm going to do a little bit of experimenting with this one. And it might be just a fisherman's eye or whatever, because I look at that and get that into focus. It has an eye that you would typically see on a jerkbait. It has a jerkbait eye that they've put in there, and it's not just willy-nilly put on there. It seems to be fastened on there. But what you'll notice too is that concave or that indented head along the side. And within there, a foil strip, which is, if you notice the color, it's kind of more like a copper reddish, which in that shallow water, I mean, that really hits them, especially in the springtime. But I just thought it was very unique. And you notice the head too is a little bit wider than most of your swim jigs. I mean, it comes to a point, but that wider head, I don't know what it's going to do. I have a feeling if it catches a little bit more water, maybe it'll affect the fall rate a little bit. But just going through the water with that kind of indented or that impression in both sides of the head, who knows? I'm going to test it out with some things, and I'll get back with you about how this performs. But if, like I said, that the look of it is unique. The eyes and that strip, that foiled strip, is pretty unique on this. The hooks look good. Everything else looks good. It just caught my eye, and I needed to buy one, so I got one. We're gonna go test it out on, I don't know, maybe Grand Lake. Maybe I'll run out there. Maybe Table Rock or whatever. We'll see what happens, where I can get out to. But like I said, I picked this up at that Ace Hardware. Very unique bait. They come in a different variety of colors. I checked out the website. There's some other stuff on there that's pretty interesting. But if you haven't heard of them, check them out. I mean, I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I just happened to see this on the rack, and I was like, dang, that looks pretty sweet compared to some of the other swim jigs. And, you know, I like to try different things. I mean, like I said, I've kind of latched onto that Mega Bass. Was it the Uzo jig or whatever? And I really like that. Of course, you end up losing the blades. You knock them around a little bit. Maybe you can save a couple dollars and run a Blitz or something else and be just as effective. Anyway, caught my eye. This one right here that I have, half ounce, they were selling them in a quarter, 3/8, and then this half ounce version in a variety of colors that look pretty darn good for just about anything. I mean, I can see running, you know, a little Zaco behind it, or, you know, whatever your Kitech, whatever your trailer wants and needs are for a swim jig. I mean, we all have our own preferences. But anyway, that's the main reason I wanted to do this video, is just because I found this cool swim jig. And I think I showed you this stuff. The other thing is, I've been trying my quest for Tokyo rig baits, because I have found a way to fish the Tokyo rig that is phenomenal. And it has to do with the bait, and I've talked about it before, that it's no longer being produced apparently by Yamamoto, that I've sent them emails and they haven't said anything to me about it. And it has to do with, I've figured it out with that Shanshoho, or whatever it is, why it's so effective. So I found a similar body or style bait that I want to try, and I just showed you the Yama Frog, and I want to try it out, and we're going to see. And it has to do, I think, a lot of that action. One, you got the spade tail, which used to be a very unique Yamamoto thing. You had that California roll, which is a pretty cool bait too. I think they got rid of that as well. But then you had the Shanshoho, and that big giant spade tail would flop around like you wouldn't believe. But also, it would be this kind of flat body, and it kind of catches water. And, you know, the Tokyo rig has that, you know, the way that swivels are, it would flutter. And I'd watched it. I was at the MPFL event at Right Patman. And of course, I stunk it up besides the last day because I was trying to get away from the crowd. But then I went ahead and just went into the crowd where I was already kind of practicing a little bit, and I went in there and I went behind guys, made sure I wasn't encroaching on anybody, went behind them, flipping that thing. I could watch it go over, and it would just like, it would do all kinds of weird stuff. And I'd watch bass come up and follow it over a log. Actually, it was into the second day. I remember now. I went back and I saw I pulled it over a log, and that thing just, you know, swam over, and a bass just came over and grabbed it, a real nice one. And then so the next day I just did that, and it was just gangbusters. It was awesome. But I've tried, you know, the flap and hog. A lot of guys use the flap and hog on that Tokyo rig and a few other things. Just doesn't have the same action. Not that it's not effective, but it just doesn't catch the water the right way to really articulate that hook the way it really can. I don't know if it's meant to be that way, but the way that I say it's intended, you know, the way that hook is on there, on that swiveled system, and can maneuver in different axes And that Sancho or that body style really catches the water and amplifies the movement of the bait in such a way that's supernatural and really draws strikes, in my opinion. And I kind of hesitant even to talk about it anymore, because it seems like everything you talk about, people start latching onto you, and it really comes into things. But I've really figured out this Tokyo rig thing, and I love it. That's what I flip with a lot. Now it's predominantly, instead of of course, light Texas rig, but when I'm punching wood, anything like that, the Tokyo rig is like my go-to thing now. I call punching wood, flipping wood. And then also just sometimes around just rock structure, or maybe even in, thick hydrilla, I'll throw the Tokyo rig another thing about that thing. So if you're throwing a bait, and I should grab one, I'm just winging this video. So if you're here with me, thank you. But I guess I could grab one. Never mind. I won't. But we'll go over this another time when I've gone in depth Tokyo rig. We'll go in depth it again. But okay, so a Texas rig, where you've traditional punch type thing, you have your line goes weight, hook, right? So you flip that thing out there, bam, the weight goes, and it's hitting this grass or whatever, and the line's coming back towards you, and your bait's over here. So the weight's punching through, and it's pulling the bait in there, but it's also being pulled by the line. So you have kind of almost like an opposing forces. You got a little bit of resistance here, and a little bit, and a little bit more resistance over here. So that bait it might not always go down unless you give it enough slack. And even if you give it enough slack on there, it's just a weird, physics dictates it's not going to fall necessarily straight down. Now, if you take the Tokyo rig, right, it's 1 point, right? And the weight's down. So the line comes here, bam, you're hooked up. And then you have the weight, the bait and the weight. So you throw that out there, and as opposed to pulling that bait down, and then, not necessarily, it has to come through and pull it straight down, but it's a little bit off, and it just doesn't do as well as opposing line. That weight here on the bottom is actually pulling everything down succinctly in a straight line, folding the bait up too, and it goes right through a lot more efficiently. I've noticed that. I've done it a lot, and I've seen it. I can get through stuff that a lot of guys with a similar weight, or maybe I can even go down to a lesser weight if the case needs to be. And I actually demonstrated this. I don't know if it's in some of my videos. When I went to Florida with the MPFL, I pulled that thing out and started flipping some of the reeds and some of the thick stuff, where a lot of guys were flipping the Texas rig. I was going behind them on the last day. Of course, I kind of screwed that one up too. Just was on small fish. That's what it was. I mean, I was catching fish, catching limits, just couldn't pull one in. And finally, I was like, well, I'm going to pull this flipping stick up. I went around where a bunch of guys were community holes, went behind them, was able to pull out a couple of nice fish doing that right behind dudes. And I could watch them, and you could see that bow in their line. And if you ever watch in the water, the bait kind of pulls this way, where the Tokyo rig kind of it just is more succinct and gets the bait straight down, and I think actually punches more efficiently through cover. Anyway, like I said, I've demonstrated a lot of times, even recently on a place like Grand, punching into bushes and stuff. I've caught some real nice fish at Grand with that, and I've taken it all over now, and now I'm talking too much about it. But anyway, we'll go in depth on that, and I'll actually show you what I mean by the physics of it and how it's a little more efficient in getting the bait where it needs to be. The other thing, grab these things. Now, I'm going to talk about this later on, because we're going to go to some of these lakes around here where out west, where I've actually learned, I've been drop shotting, let's say, 20 years plus now. Well, concurrently, and before the drop shot, out west, we threw a thing called a split shot. Or you can call it a micro Carolina rig. And these baits right here, these little ribbon tails, I've cleaned house. I think I won my first tournament. Well, I was on a drop shot, but I've also done really well in that lake throwing that split shot. And it was a lake in Arizona that I won my first tournament. It was mainly on a drop shot, sight fishing. And then I just called that whole bag out drop shotting. And that's a whole nother story. But another tournament, I went there, just dropped in, didn't practice at all. Went up looking for those bed fish, didn't didn't really find anything. I think I lost like an 8-pounder. Came back to the main lake, started throwing that drop shot around, just cleaned house while everybody else was drop shotting stuff. These fish kind of got a little more acclimated to that, where I can drag that little bait like that, and it would have to be that color too. But anyway, split shotting is another thing I like to get into here later on, especially when you have fish kind of staging up a little bit. But I think the next video we'll do, or sometimes it might not be the next video, but we're going to get into that winter stuff. I've done winter stuff in the past, and some of my favorite baits, and I've seen some videos popping up about them. And I think I have a unique perspective on some of these winter baits. I'm really good with them, and they're some of my favorite baits. And in fact, I've transitioned a lot of them into other times of the year now, just because they're such confidence baits, and they're so good in different scenarios other than just winter. It just so happens in the winter time that fish are staged at certain ways, that it allows you to really gain the confidence with those baits. But they also do certain things in other seasons where you can utilize those baits. And particularly, I'm mentioning like the blade bait or a rattle, my lipless crankbait. I know, rattle trap, whatever. Anyway, I want to leave it there. I appreciate your support of the channel. Please like it and subscribe. We'll be doing a lot more stuff hopefully soon. I've just been really busy with my regular job now, and we're gonna get to it. But anyway, talk to you later. Peace.